Listen close, this is an HFY story, the kind that starts as a whisper and ends with your pulse in your throat. When the Krith Hegemony came for the Concord, no one expected help. The Concord had ruled in velvet and glass for 1,000 years, and the Krith's iron mouths were already at the core. Worlds burned along the meridian spine. Stations went dark without even SOS tags. The Krith were efficient, ravenous, inevitable. On the 4th day of the siege of Ilexis space tour, it wasn't a gate, not the neat elliptical mouths the Concord's merchants used, but a scar, an angular shear that made every instrument in the system complain. From the wound, ships pressed through. They were the opposite of Concord grace. Their hulls were slab-armored, suit-kissed. Their identifiers were old, obsolete by any registry, and their formation work was cruelly precise. Some swore they saw the same emblem across several bows, 3 lines converging on a single star. The Concord's tactical eye threw up old myths inside panes like someone had kicked a museum storage crate open. Ghost civilization, anthropoid bipedals, brutal kinetics, humans, whispered one attendant in disbelief as if speaking the word might summon a curse. The Krith fired first. Great crescent lances of white heat that ate mass and light. The incoming ships did not turn aside. Armor tiles flaked incandescent, then cooled. Behind them coil spines flexed. The return volley was not light. Rods the size of towers, sleeved in ablators and spun to screaming, punched into the Krith vanguard. Shields flared, then shattered. Hulls came apart without the dignity of explosion, like someone had smashed glassware with a hammer. The Krith ran hard for the gravity well, then died in the blind arc of a follow-up volley. In the control theater aboard UNS Revenant, Admiral Mira Solace watched the numbers arrive. Casualties negligible. Krith task cluster erased. Her ship's intelligence ORACLE fanned data across the board like a patient teacher. Trajectories, emissions, panic. For minutes, said Solace. Ilexis ground batteries will be online again. Keep the net open for civilians, no pursuit beyond 12. Captain Jalen Okoye glanced sidelong. They'll think we're here to liberate them. Solace's eyes stayed on the crater in the sky where the Krith had been. We're here to remind them. Across the Concord, the feeds lit with impossible footage, brutal silhouettes and disciplined lines, tungsten rain turning dreadnoughts into confetti, a voice on an open band translated across 400 tongues. United Terran Directorate. We remember. No demands. No manifesto. Just that, and the terrible competence of it. The Concord's Chamber of Harmonies panicked in polished tones. Chancellor Xalith of Argoth convened an emergency sitting and, after listening to 40 minutes of fear disguised as policy, did what no one else dared. She asked for a docking code. The code came back at once. The Revenant wasn't beautiful, it was a weapon given corridors. Xalith's procession stepped through the docking collar under the quiet aim of soldiers whose armor fit like history. Their rifles hung idle. Their visors watched everything. Admiral Mira Solace met the Chancellor with no adornment beyond a single patch over her heart, 3 lines and a star. Her face had the unyielding geometry of someone who had made a pact with sleep and lost. You asked for audience, Solace said. Proceed. Xalith had spent half a lifetime mapping other people's needs and then laying roads that led to her own. She knew the scent of bargaining, the weight of lack. She found none of it here. The Concord seeks understanding, she said carefully. You vanished, no ruins, no traffic, no recordable traffic, no. We didn't vanish, Solace said. Her voice wasn't warm or cruel, it was a statement meant to be filed. We were watching. Xalith's stomach cooled. If you were watching, you saw the Krith. You saw what they did. I saw you watching them, Solace said, and doing nothing until your borders caught fire. The Chancellor had prepared arguments, concessions, even a moment of theatrical contrition. All of it fell apart against the simple wall of that accusation. She tried a different vector. What do you want? Justice? Solace said. Against the Krith, against anyone who profited from our absence. Xalith exhaled slowly. ORACLE dimmed the room a degree, as if the ship itself were listening closer. Your absence, she repeated. Admiral, we have no record of a war against your kind. Our archives list your species as legend. The old maps show Sol, and then, she spread her hands. Blankness. We have our own archives, Solace said. We have the edge of a trail and a wound where our cradle should be. Earth didn't burn. It was taken out of the sky like a picked tooth. The coordinates are missing from catalogs that cannot be edited without leaving a scar. Those scars exist in your house's Chancellor. Xalith's mouth went dry. If the Concord had knowledge of such, you don't know your own sins, Solace said, and for the first time there was a hairline crack in the flatness of her voice. Not anger, awareness. But some of you do. The ones who were there, who signed the quiet authorizations, who erased the footpath back to our home and told stories about our bright, terrible end to frighten children into obedience. Centuries have passed, Xalith said, because she had nothing else. We are not the council, you remember, and yet here we are, Solace replied. They stood like that, two architectures of power with different foundations, one built on consensus and fahades, the other on the physics of impact. Xalith could feel the history pressing up through the deck. What happens now, she asked. Solace turned to the nearest holopane. A map unfolded, red stains where the Krith had ruled, pale blue sigils like arrowheads marching system by system, gray currents that represented refugees and chance. We take the teeth out of the Krith so they can't bite anyone again. We turn on factories your governors shut down for profit. We lay defensive nets and teach anyone who wants it how to weld an enemy out of their sky. We open our courts to the ones your chamber calls unimportant, and we collect testimony. And then we find whoever made Earth disappear. Solace's voice softened until it was almost kind. We won't ask permission. The Krith died fast. They had been apex predators in a field of herbivores, practiced on grazing things that could be ring-fenced and cut. The human fleets didn't graze and they didn't flee. They arrived through shearlines with timing like a metronome, poured tungsten and smart sand into Krith latticework, and left behind orbitals that spun back to life within the day. If a Krith warlord tried to run, a human frigate met them in the gravity well and cut their escape with a bracketing pattern that looked like lace until the rounds arrived. If they dug in, human marines went in hard and came out harder. Never with slaves, never with trophies, only with prisoners for trial and locals with medical tags. On IV-9 the Krith bunkers fell in 19 minutes. On Childer's Belt, a pirate barge tried to change flags mid-fight and was boarded by a team who tagged the crew for labor debt relief instead of spacing them. In the old Asterian corridor, 3 Concord worlds lowered their shields without being asked, and human ships landed with cranes instead of cannons. Why do they surrender so quickly? Okoye asked during a lull. Because for the first time in a century, Solace said, someone's making a promise with steel. The feeds turned. Old propagandists tried to paint the United Terran Directorate as executioners. The new reels showed med bays, not gallows, retooled factories, not looted cathedrals. Comment threads filled with a sentence that made the chamber howl. They keep their word. Xalith watched the chamber's cohesion erode like frost under noon. Governors who had taken bribes to look away sent hesitant feelers through back channels. Terms, sanctions, amnesties. Then burned their own messages when they realized there would be no back channel at all. The Directorate published what it knew on a public relay, a ledger of erased references, altered star maps, asset movements aligned to the age of the Vanishing. The ledger kept updating as more worlds joined and more archives opened. Every time they take a system, one Concord Admiral spat in a closed session, the Directorate gets stronger. Every time we take a system, Xalith said softly, surprising herself with the pronoun. We used it to keep our friends rich. The room went silent. No one argued. There were only so many euphemisms for the same rot. When the shearline opened above Naos, a Concord task force was already there, lined up primly across the approach like a school of fish pretending to be a shark. Solace brought the Revenant to a patient halt within firing range and did not fire. This is the part, Okoye said, where they ask for concessions, then try to flank us while we read. We'll give them better choreography, Solace said. She opened a channel. Chancellor Xalith. Her image arrived, unarmored, almost defiant in its lack of theater. Admiral. You came? Solace said. Your chamber must be furious. They can be furious in ruins or furious under flag. I have no appetite for ruins. Neither do we. Xalith didn't flinch. You want names? Trails, keys to old rooms. I will open what I can. Some doors we welded ourselves shut without writing down why. But I can promise access. Solace regarded her across the vector of 1,000 sins. You're not asking for a treaty. A posture would be a lie, Xalith said. Call this survival. ORACLE through Solace a private line of text. Concord public sentiment around Naos receptive to joint relief. Krith militia remnants present dirt side. Opportunity to demonstrate praxis. Then we begin here, Solace said. We clear the Krith nests. You publish the ledgers you've hidden. We lay a shield net you can maintain without tribute. And you install courts that will hear children and dock hands before princes. Xalith blinked. Of all the demands she had rehearsed refusing, this was not one. No tribute. Solace's eyes crinkled a millimeter. We're not here to tax you, Chancellor. We're here to prove a point. And what point is that? That myths are obligations, not stories. The Krith nest on Naos fell in a storm of clean violence. Human marines moved like geometry given blood. Concord defense batteries recayed and guilted into firing joined in. When the smoke thinned, the Directorate didn't raise its flag over the central dome. Dock cranes did. A field kitchen open next to a decontam line. A child with Jill slits got a blanket and a sugar stick in the careful attention of a medic who smelled like coffee. On a balcony overlooking a city that was learning to breathe again, Xalith stood with Solace. You could have killed us. Cease at once, Solace said. Before the Krith taught your people how to fear. There's no victory in a graveyard, Chancellor. There's only silence. What do you want from me now? Names, said, and a promise. Xalith nodded. You'll have both. She stared at the sky where the Shearline's faint aurora still bruised the black. And if the names you want wear our colors, they'll stand trial. And if the trial finds what I suspect, they will hang. Solace's voice didn't harden or soften. It simply kept its duty. We are not interested in pleasing your chamber. We are interested in making it impossible for anyone to erase a home again. And if Earth is truly gone, then we will leave a mark where it should be that no one can pretend not to see. Across the spine, worlds chose without being pushed. Some chose to fight and were shown what it looked like when an enemy fought to end a fight rather than enjoy it. Most chose the opposite, to call their governors home and open their ports to the convoys that came with engineers and midwives. 1,000 small good decisions accumulated like ballast in a ship. The Concord as it had been did not survive. Something meaner could have grown in its place, all knives wrapped in new banners. Instead, under eyes that had learned the old habit of watching, a different shape emerged, courts that listened, stations that repaired, worlds that took the word united and decided it could mean more than tall uniforms and hard eyes. On the day the Directorate opened the first hall of testimony, Xalith spoke not as a chancellor but as a citizen who had been in the room when the world learned the truth about itself. We built a civilization that became excellent at forgetting, she said. The humans came back and made forgetting impossible. Admiral Mira Solace did not speak that day. She sat in the back like a student, listening to dockhands and archivists tell stories about edits and edits of edits, about a conspiracy that had spread like mold across centuries, about a blue world erased from 1,000,000 maps. She liked the feel of it under her skin, the steadying weight of truth replacing the old vacancy. When she stood finally, it was to leave for the next Shearline, the next Krith den, the next ledger that might hold a key. ORACLE spun her a small projection in her palm, a star with 3 lines converging on it. Home, said Okoye, watching the symbol spin. Not yet, said Solace. But now they have to try and stop us to keep it lost. What will you do when they do? Solace smiled in a way that never reached the scar at the corner of her mouth. What myths are obliged to do. And the armadas slid into sheer, not with banners or speeches, but with the gravity of a promise kept.